Hi guys, Yacca here. So we have the new expansion coming up, Scholomance Academy, which is Kel'Thuzad's School of Magic, it seems. Um, so first off, why I want to do this. It's always fun to see and watch either other people or oneself give a view on how the cards, the power level of those, how they fit in the meta and stuff like that. And I want to throw that out there as well. I'm a consistent Legend player and also play a lot of Arena. So those are the perspectives that I have coming into this card review. I'm not an opinionator or anything like that, or disillusion myself saying that I have the best knowledge, I know more than the experts or anything. But it's fun to see and get some different perspectives on things, and I haven't seen a lot of other people trying to give too many reviews on these things, but I'll be trying to do a fresh perspective on those. And what I generally do not see is that anyone trying to actually connect both the arena side and also the constructed side of things. And that's what I'll be doing here. So I'll be talking about the cards in some more words, but I'll also be giving a stars rating on constructed and the arena as well. So just to explain about the stars, it's going to be a 5-star rating, and if you have a 1-star on the constructed and the arena side, it's more or less going to be unplayable, at least at this point in time with the cards that we do know. So it's not something that you'll see or want to build around. 2 stars, that needs a bunch of support. It might be a fringe case where you can use a card, but it's not something that you would expect. Again, the card could be kind of okay, or in a fringe situation or case, you'd use it both in constructed and arena. 3 stars, it's going to be something you see. It's going to be a standard card. It might be something that you can slot in or fill into a deck. It might be a tech card. You can also argue that the 2-star rating would be a really fringe tech inclusion, maybe for a tournament or stuff like that. But it's something that you might see eventually. But for instance, for arena, those 3-star cards, those will be something you're going to be happy. They're quite good to put in a draft. So it's something that you will definitely see in the arena, and it's going to be okay for you to draft. 4 stars, that's going to be a little bit more where you'll definitely want those. It's going to be in constructed. You're going to be having those in the deck. It's going to be something that you try to build around to include. And in the arena, you're going to be really happy about getting those 4-star cards. 5 stars, that's kind of the top end of things. There's always going to be 5-star cards, but they are going to be stuff that are really heavy hitters. It's going to be something that is included in every possible build of a deck, or something that is really heavy in that specific deck archetype that this might introduce. So it might introduce a new completely deck archetype, at least in the way that I see it. Again, this is my perspectives, and it's always fun to be both right, of course, but also to see where you're wrong whenever all of the cards are revealed. And the meta is kind of being built when the new expansion is coming out. And for arena, those 5-star cards, those are something that you really want to acquire for the deck. It's something that no matter what, you should just pick them right away, at least, again, from my perspective. So those are kind of the stars ratings, and I'll be going through the first 14 cards that's been revealed so far. And I guess we'll just jump right into the card review. If there's anything that you want to have a little bit more explanation on, I'll be trying my best to explain the cards as we go along, and also around the system that I have. Or if there's anything else that you have any questions or comments to, just drop comments in under the video, and I'll do my best to get back to you, and also maybe explain it a little bit more in upcoming card review videos. But let's head on into the card review. Alright, so the first one we actually have already. So this is a little bit kind of cheating. I'm not guessing how this will actually impact things. There's already some stuff out there. And you can see the stars rating next to me. And that will be the way that I will be doing all the cards. So Transfer Student. As if you just look at the vanilla stats of the minion, it's a 2-mana 2/2. So not really great if you look at the stat line for the minion. Except that the different effects that you get, it's based on the game board. You probably know this already. You'll already be having, if you're logged in, you will have this card to play with. And at the point of inception of the card, there'll be 24 game boards. And with the new Scholomance board coming up, there'll be the 25th one coming in. And looking at those at the point of time of the expansion, there'll be 10 game boards. There'll be standard. Having looked through those, and I'll provide a link in the description to a site where I found a list on Play Hearthstone, where that's kind of a brief list. I don't want to be doing this myself. There's already stuff that's out there. You can probably just search for it already, and also it's on the webpage. Blizzard's official webpage. You can also look through the different things there. But generally, looking at those 10 game boards that will be part of the constructed scene, 6 of the effects will be tempo effects, board effects that will do something soon after, or just as soon as you drop the card, that will provide you some tempo almost right away. And the 4 other will provide you with some value, some card generation. Some potential really heavy hitting cards that you generate or that you could draw into. So definitely this is a really strong card, and it's already seen playing in Highlander lists as a one-off inclusion, but it might be something that you also see eventually. This is one of the strongest 2-drops we have. And for the arena scene, this is definitely strong. I'm not 100% sure it's actually already included, because I haven't run into it myself in any of my arena drafts, and it's not something I've checked so far if it's going to be in there. But if we're just looking at it from an arena perspective, this is going to be really strong. Also because some of the in arena you might encounter some of the older game boards, and some of those which are also really powerful. Some very powerful effects. So this is definitely something that you should pick, and getting some early cards which does a lot, and for many of the effects they also do something late game. That is so powerful in the arena. So definitely a 5-star rating for the arena side and 4 stars for constructed. But again, this is something that we've already seen, and it's a really good and strong start to the expansion coming up. Definitely solid card all around. Something that you already have. So go out there and try it out. It's definitely fun as it is right now. So, yep, Transfer Student, definitely a very powerful card. Alright, next up we have the Onyx Magescribe, which has the tribe dragon. So it's a strong standalone card. This is the first time I won't be reviewing this each and every time, but this is the first time we encounter the effect Spell Burst. So just a short introduction to that. You drop it on the board. It does nothing as you drop it, but as you cast a spell, if you have this on your game board, it will be a one-time effect which triggers everything after the spell burst keyword, and then it won't happen again. So it's not something you can do multiple times a turn, or it refreshes on the next turn. So it's going to be a one-time effect. You can do this as you drop it on the game board. It doesn't need to be out of summoning sickness or stuff like that. It's something that whenever you cast a spell and it's there, this effect happens. The spell burst for this one is that you add 2 random spells from your class to your hand. So it's not completely random. It is something within the realm of possibilities that is your class. So it's not something that you, for instance, you'll get warrior spells which revolve around weapon buffs and stuff like that when you're playing a mage or whatever might be the case. So this is also good enough. It means that there's a good chance it might be something that is targeted for the stuff that you want to do as a class. Again, it is, I give this in constructed, I give this 3 stars. It's not something that is completely crazy and that you want to slot into each and every deck. Many times when I look at this from an arena perspective, I do this vanilla test. So the stats when it costs 6 should add up to at least 12, 6 attack and 6 life for the card. It is something where you, and right now I would say it's more like a +1. It should be, instead of 12, it should be 13, because the cards that are created at the moment are somewhat stronger. And this passes that vanilla test, so it's just a good enough strong card because it actually sums up to the 13 for the 6 cost that you want to have for the card. So therefore it's a fine arena card. I just want to say for the constructed part, I jumped a little bit back and forth, but for the constructed part, having this part of the dragon pool is definitely great if you generate random dragons, maybe out of Dragon Queen Alexstrasza or whatever you discover a dragon, something like that. It's great to have in there because it's strong enough. When you discover it, it might give you something that you could win the game or switch the game around, something that is not included as part of the cards that you've chosen to include in that specific constructed list. Or it gives you that 3rd spell that provides some more swings. It's something that you don't mind having in the pool of dragons. It's just not something that you would specifically want to put in your deck because it's random. It's not something that pushes a game plan specifically. It could be something that is slotted in a Highlander build, something like that, or something that is in a budget Highlander build. So therefore, it's still good enough to give it 3 stars. It might be something that you see, but I think it's more important from the dragon pool of cards that you might generate. But again, I talked a little bit about the arena side already. Even if you do not get the effect from the spell burst in the arena, there's not going to be that many spells. It's kind of, the spells in arena are a little bit diminished as opposed to minions. It's a very minion heavy game mode, and you fight for board, but still you're going to be having spells, and there's a good chance that you will get the spell burst off because the stat line for the dragon for the Onyx Magescribe is 9 health. So there's a good chance it might actually reside on the board until the next turn, or you might be able to drop the spell right away. It seems like we're getting some cheap spells as it is right now, and then you might be able to do the spell burst right away. And therefore, I think from an arena perspective, there's no downside to this, and the upside is really through the roof. Getting spells are initiative, and initiative are so important in the arena. That's why I really think the Onyx Magescribe is something that you want to pick. It's cheap enough to have an impact on almost each and every game. Many times I would say that if you have some high cost cards in the arena, like 7, 8, 9, 10 even, then they really have to be massive in the effect that they actually provide. Because sometimes you won't even get to that point in the game, or if you drop a 9 or 10 drop or a spell or whatever might be the case, it needs to swing the game heavily as you play that card. You can't just drop your full mana pool and just have nothing happen on the board or just that you're already winning, you drop that and you win more. That's great, but it's not something that you want to be drafting too much into the arena. They need to really provide the swing, and this is somewhat cheap and actually does that in the arena. So solid, powerful arena card, and a good constructed card, the way I see it. Alright, so a 0 mana spell. First day of school, you have the freshmen coming into Scholomance Academy. This is generally, I have my antennas out, so to speak, when we have the 0 mana spells, because generally these are they really have the potential to kind of break the game, because you get something without investing anything else than a card slot in the deck list, whether it's an arena deck list or it's a constructed deck list. So I'm trying to evaluate how much does it actually impact that you have a 0 mana spell which generates 2 cards. These are random. It's not something that you've chosen to include in a list, so it might be something that is not supporting the strategy that you want to perform. However, we do have spell burst. I just talked about this. The spell burst with this one for Paladin, it allows you to essentially do a spell burst for free. And then you also generate 2 1-cost minions, which might be good, which might not be good. But I think this is really strong in constructed because you can build around this. And it seems like with the stuff that we've seen so far and with what Paladin has been able to do in the past, to kind of do a swarm deck, a zoo deck approach, it seems like this is going to be pushed a little bit again. They do have some cards for it, and the star rating that I provide with 4 stars from the constructed side is that I actually expect that there will be some more swarm cards, zoo cards for the deck, but there's already a bunch of support for it. I know there's been leaked a card, which will come up in a future review at some point, which supports this, but we already have stuff like Flying Carpet, which is a good card, a good kind of zoo playstyle, which this supports. And I was looking through the pool of 1-drops as we know them so far. There will be more coming. But as they are right now, they're in roughly around 60. I think I counted up to 64 potential 1-drops this will give you. Why did I do that? I looked through the 1-drops and just tried to have an assessment of how impactful they will be. There are around 6, the way I counted it, late game impact 1-drops. What I mean about that is that they will draw you a card which forwards the game plan you already have for the deck. 1-drops that will generate you something, generate a lackey, which then generates maybe a dragon or a spell or something like that. Some really late game relevant 1-cost minions. And if you look at kind of the percentages, I didn't crunch the exact numbers, but it's something where you say that you have roughly around a 9% chance to draw a 1-cost minion that impacts the late game. But you have 2 chances of getting at least 1, but sometimes maybe also 2. So having that idea saying that at least 1 of your 1-cost minions will have some late game impact actually translating to like 15-16%. On top of probably having some spell burst value with the spell already as it is. So therefore, I think this is a little bit out on the limb. It's a little bit more uncertain that the 4 stars are merited for the constructed side of things. This is something that we will see in Paladin decks going forward. It's not going to be for... It might be something that could actually support the pure Paladin build that we see already. The pure Paladin build is just somewhat more of a control deck as it is. And it might be more in line with what we see with the Murloc Paladin that is actually that is blooming at the moment. But it'll be more skewed towards like general minions, not specifically focused around Murlocs. But I think it's good enough that it's something that you'll see, and it's not tried and true, but it's tried, and there'll be enough support that this will be in the Paladin decks that will be run in as the new expansion hits. For Arena, the uncertainty also that the pool of 1-drops I look to, that's not certain, because it'll change up the different expansions that will be included are not the same ones as is in constructed. Sometimes it fits, but it'll be changing a lot, and you won't be guaranteed to draft in a way that you have synergy for the 0-cost spells. You much rather be running with some certainty in the arena, saying, well, I know I get this amount of value out of the cards. I don't think it's going to be that powerful. Again, if you do see that you have 4 or 5 different cards which actually has a spell burst effect, this goes up in the pick value. But just as a standalone card, I don't think it's strong enough to count for. And again, I'm not sure if it's going to be the constructed pool of cards, but for the 16% impact cards, and also some really, really bad 1-drops, which actually does more or less nothing. So this uncertainty is not something that propels you to a high win rate in the arena. So I only give it 2 stars for Arena, but an interesting card, at least for the constructed scene. And again, it might be that I'm wrong with the Arena. I probably will be trying it out, just to see if I'm right in that regard, that I don't deem it that good. But a very interesting card, and the 0-mana spells, or 0-mana cards in general, are something to keep an eye out for, because they have the potential to be really powerful. Alright, so we have the School Troublemaker, apparently. So I deem this really powerful, looking at it from a constructive perspective. It kind of fits in if there's a mid-range deck somehow, or if you can cheat this out. I've been thinking about and hearing around the Dimensional Ripper. So it's this, I seem to remember it as a 10-mana card that pulls out 2 copies of a minion in your deck. If the warrior archetype is going to be good enough, this is something that supports it. Yes, of course, then it's really good. What the card does is that at the end of the turn, it generates a bunch of more stats, because it does not really even pass the vanilla test. It should be like 8-9 in stats, and it's 6-8. But it also generates an additional 6 attack and 6 health, which might stick around if your opponent doesn't have anything else. It's going to be like a fireball to face with 2 3/3 minions left over, and that is really powerful. Really strong standalone card. And it does something more or less right away as you play it. So this is something that the card really has going for it, and I think it's something that we could see, or at least will be tried out in the early phases of the game. These are really interesting and strong effects. So from a constructed perspective, yes, it might be something that you just play, and if you are able to cheat it out somehow, then it's incredibly powerful. So this is something that, for some of the builds around in the warrior archetype, yes, it's definitely something we can see, and it's definitely good, definitely. For arena, this is completely crazy. 8 mana cards needs to do a lot, and it really does, because it's kind of an 8, and then it's 12, 14, which generates an additional 6 attack and 6 health each and every turn it's left over on the board. And you generally have a somewhat reduced number of spells in the arena, so it's much more difficult to actually remove this. And it does something in the way that when you drop this, it does something right away. It might give you lethal. It might screw up your opponent's board in a way that you can manipulate the board in a way that those 2/3/3 ruffians will have a high probability of impacting the board in a way that gives you a swing. It actually can give you this board swing, which is so important in the arena, that can get you back on track if you lost the board. So definitely for arena, just with this one rare card, warrior is in a really good spot. This is definitely something that you would want to draft. And for an 8 mana card, it's not bad even, because at 8 mana, having this board swing back in your favor is really what you want to get out of an 8 mana card. So really powerful. Definitely pick this. There's no question in my mind this is going to be a great arena card. Definitely. So go for it, and be happy to include it in the early warrior decks as well, which kind of have a mid-range or control strategy. Not for the aggro ones. If there's going to be an aggressive warrior build, then this is not a card for that specific one, because the game should more or less be over at turn 8, or else you're not looking to just generate extra ruffians or impact the board. You want to have very targeted damage at that point in the game. So for specific warrior builds and constructed, and an amazing arena card, definitely. All right, so we have the first dual class card in the card review. Dual class means that it is a class card, but for 2 classes. And there are kind of I guess you can find that somewhere where you can see which classes are actually sharing. For instance, this one is shared between Shaman and Mage. And it's kind of a devolve connected to an Arcane Missiles, and it's only 1 mana. So transform effects are of course random. It's something that can backfire, but many times it's where it screws with your opponent's game plan, and therefore these transform effects are usually really good. With some of the cards that we've seen already, to just transform them into something else which doesn't give the effect or the death rattle or whatever continuous effect that the card actually has, is something that is really powerful. And the way that this one works is that it fires these 3 missiles. It might hit different minions, but it might also hit the same one. If you look at back to Devolve at that point in time, the way that worked, it was just the whole board was actually reduced to 1 cost less. At that point in time, there were broad board taunt effects where Devolve was really good. But this time, at least what I've seen in the meta so far, is that you have your single target that you have to address somehow. You have to hard remove it or something like that. Or maybe you just have a few minions which has a lingering or sticking effect, or the death rattle. For instance, Resurrect Priest. This is it's still a little bit in the meta, but if that becomes something again, or actually reemerges, just devolving that into something that might be completely useless to resurrect, or as a good response to a resurrection where you just transform it to something else, could be a really strong counter to those specific decks. And again, something that is untargetable. For instance, we have the Evasive Dragonet at the moment. This is 7 mana taunt, untargetable dragon. This gets there anyway because it's randomly targeted. So if your opponent just drops this one, then you actually do have the possibility to reduce it to a 4-drop, and you don't have that 7/7 untargetable dragon to actually concern yourself with. So this is really powerful, and I think, as you can see from the stars rating, it is somewhat more powerful in the arena. I'm going a little bit out on a limb saying it's going to be 5 stars in the arena, but I really do think that many times it's a very board-centric way of struggling, and if you can reduce 1 or 2 targets by 3 cost in total, getting some random cards, which usually are worse than what you would pick and put in a deck, an arena draft, then you're really on your way to control the board and swing the game in your favor. So definitely keep an eye out for this. I think it's going to be a completely crazy arena card, and a very, very good inclusion in many shaman and mage decks. It's probably not going to be for each and every of the builds, but it's definitely, as a standalone, really powerful. As a flash from the past, I actually have an example of what the devolve effect can actually do for you. So a couple of years back in 2017, I weren't an official Danish championship, but the unofficial one I was actually participating in, and the devolve effect actually made sure that I was able to push for lethal in one of the games which I had. So I'd like to give you some gameplay from way past, where you can see how the devolve effect actually works. It's something a little bit different because it's not where you have these missiles. It's of course something completely different, but it's kind of the same mindset I'm going into this specific card with. So without further ado, let's transition into and finish off this specific card evaluation with this clip that I have from a couple of years ago, where I actually was playing with the Devolve in a tournament.
Det kommer nogle taunts. 2 drops. Så chancen for, at det bliver en taunt, der goal shot footman.
Han kan dobbelt devolve og er sikker på, at der ikke er nogen taunt.
Men så kan han ikke bloodlust.
Det beklager vi lige.
Tænk at play, det er devolve bloodlust her, og så har du mere eller mindre gamet in the bag, tør jeg sige. Du putter ham op på 6, 5, 3. Ja. Lad os et hurtigt game her fra Yacca.
Så endte han med at få noget ud af sin bloodlust alligevel.
Ja.
Another dual class card. Another 0-mana spell, which again, the antennas is out. This is potentially something that is very dangerous. I've been wobbling a little bit back between 4 stars and 5 stars for the rating for constructed. If there is going to be a combo deck for Druid or Shaman, this is going to be an auto include. The overload for 2 is going to be completely irrelevant. This is what you'll do to manifest the board state, to execute the win. This is the finishing move for whatever you want your deck to do. So this is going to be a combo piece. The overload is completely irrelevant. This is a 0 mana. You use a card slot to get to 12 mana in a single turn. And hey, it's not even a legendary. So let's take 14 mana in a turn. Doing the calculation between... There is the possibility from this to drop Malygos, and just within Shaman to drop a, what is that called, Frost Shock, and a couple of lightning bolts, something like that. What's that? That's going to be 8, 16. If you also drop a lava burst, we're getting up to too many mana, but 2 frost shocks as well. It's going to be a lot of cards, but you have the possibility there to do this finishing move. You can guarantee with a certain amount of cards. Maybe you're just stalled throughout the game. Maybe you need to sit with like 6 or 7 cards in hand, but you can guarantee 30 damage in a turn with Malygos and some spells, where Lightning Bloom is a key combo piece in this. So it's going to be tried out. Not sure it's going to be good. We don't know yet. But it's possible to do, and it's possible due to this specific card. Therefore, I see no other alternative for me than rate this 4 stars in the constructed scene. Because this will be able to introduce a new possibility for you to play Druid and Shaman. Druid were close to having this OTK built already, so if they get some kind of damage card which can go face, right now with this there is the possibility to drop Malygos and then swipe face and drop a couple of Moonfires. This gets you very far in actually securing the lethal. But you might need just one more card which you can go face, and then you're there. For Shaman, they can do it, but it's going to be a substantial amount of cards as we have from what the pool of cards that we have already for you to actually do this 1-turn kill. But it's going to be tried out. We'll see if the 4-star rating falls short, but it's going to be a possibility. I think that's kind of what I need to say around this in Constructed. This is a dangerous card, but we haven't seen the rest of the set. And there are also already going to be, that's going to be the next card that I review for you guys, a counter to this specific situation. So it might be something that is already factored in, but I have my concerns. But it's going to be they might fall short, or it might just be great that there's a deck like a complete OTK combo deck out there, which could be viable because there's no archetype like that at the moment. From an arena perspective, it's good. It's not something that you can build around. You have to... cheating out mana in the arena is also good, but you can't do it in such a decisive way as you can do in Constructed, that you use this as a finishing move. So therefore, in Arena, those 2 Overload Crystals is going to be impactful somehow. But just moving mana ahead, that you can use mana on an earlier turn, that's very good in Arena. So it's not going to be completely 4 stars like I have in Constructed, but it's something that you might not be too sad picking, because it'll allow you to bridge some of the curve gaps that you might have. It might introduce a power turn to try and swing back a losing board state, swing that back in your favor. But there is the downside to consider in Arena as opposed to Constructed, where you do have the Overload Crystals, where you have to kind of pay them back with interest, because you also want to be using your complete mana pool on the next turns. You might also be in a top deck situation where Lightning Bloom is completely horrible, so you also need to make sure that you have the deck for it in Arena. So there's a little more dependency when you have the Arena focus. But if you have the deck for it, it's gonna be good. But you have to be really cautious around drafting, because it needs to fit in a specific way. I think that's enough said around Lightning Bloom for the Arena. Good, yes, but be careful. It needs to suit the draft. If you do have a very aggressive draft for Shaman and Druid, then this is not the one that you want. You want to push damage, you want to maybe have some card draw and stuff like that. You don't want to push for additional mana crystals. Okay, we have a neutral card called Neophyte. It's a solid statted 2-drop with a battle cry that your opponent's spells cost 1 more next turn. So it's something that only negatively impacts your opponent. So this is strong, or at least good. In Constructed, it's not going to be applicable in every deck unless there's something that is completely meta defining. This needs to counter. It's a counterplay to something specifically. It might be a spell OTK build. It might be a spell druid if they're still right throughout the expansion as that hits, or some other kind of complete spell decks or something like that. Then the cult Neophyte is going to be a really good tech inclusion, or might be a tech inclusion in tournaments where you need to build around some different things, where you can ban maybe some of the decks that your opponent might be playing, and then play this as something that counters some of the other decks which might be more spell reliant. So it's good at that it's there, and it might find a suit in Constructed, but it is highly dependent on what everything else looks like. So I think it's good. It's not going to be meta defining in Constructed. For Arena, there's no downside to this. This is just a 2-drop that you really want. A perfectly fine 2-drop. So for instance, if you don't have the coin, you're going first. So maybe you do a 1-drop, maybe you don't have a 1-drop. Your opponent doesn't do anything on turn 1, and then you drop this on 2. Well, even if this does nothing else than just contest your opponent's 2-drop, your opponent can't use the coin on turn 2 to try and swing the game in his or her favor by dropping a 3-drop against your 2-drop. That's where you can try to do in Arena, try to do the first push when you're on the coin. Just skip turn 2 and go straight to 3 and 3, because then you are contesting your opponent's 2-drop. The cult Neophyte just denies that completely. So therefore, in Arena, this is definitely powerful, because it actually, one of the possibilities that you had, because generally going second in Arena is really, really bad. But the coin and the card quality in general, as something that has increased, is much more focused around the skill. But if you take the coin out of that equation, then it's much more likely that the early game will fall in your favor. And if you can continue the curve from that, then your opponent coining into 4 is not going to be as relevant as you have your 2 and you can present your 3-drop, and then you start to be able to have initiative cards and stuff like that. So this is really powerful in Arena. This is definitely a 2-drop that you'll be going for and should go for, and it's also good in the late game. There's going to be maybe some spells like the 10-mana spell for Hunter and a Grand Slam. They can't use that. It's going to be costing 11. They don't have that kind of mana. It's not possible. You can't break, even though you can cheat out mana, you can't break that 10-point mark. So it's something where you can render things unplayable. So definitely, I hope I've done this card justice, saying it's really solid. I was kind of, should I give this 5 as a 2-drop? I was almost there. Pick this definitely in Arena. There's no downside to it, and it's a great 2-drop. And it's a probable tech inclusion against a specific meta, or something that you use in tournaments for constructed. Alright, here we have a Paladin Spellburst effect. Goody Two-Shields. It's a 3-mana 4/2 with a Divine Shield. So essentially the first hit is infinite health, something like that. So you need to hit this twice. It could be a ping, but it could also be like an 8/8 that needs to hit into this in order to pop off, or to pop the Divine Shield, or whatever might be the case. So it's strong, and actually seems to suit the kind of Sue minion kind of playstyle. And you also have your 0-mana spell, which this works with. Of course, you can't drop this and use the spell burst right away, because it will make 2 Divine Shields. It's just going to fizzle out. You just won't get anything out of the spell burst. And it doesn't have rush or charge, so it's not something where you can utilize the Divine Shields. It needs to stick for a turn. That's why it's not going to be... If this had rush, it would be completely insane. So it's good that it does not, but it's still going to be a strong card. So if the, like a, whatever, Highlander, mid-range, or kind of a Sue build where you need to be board-centric somehow as Paladin, then Goody Two-Shields is going to be good, because you have your King's Blessing. So you can drop this, maybe you pop the Divine Shield, and then you do a King's Blessing on turn 4. It kind of transitions perfectly into that. There's going to be an 8/6 with Divine Shield again. So from that perspective, if you can make Goody Two-Shields stick, it's going to be a little bit difficult, because it's going to be a priority target. But if you can make it stick, it's going to be great. If it's going to be completely 4 stars, I'm kind of a little bit... I was on the fence about that, but it's out of the assumption that there's going to be some kind of swarm build for Paladin, which wants to use some kind of buff effects, which there's a right amount with the Librams and stuff like that. And you don't even need to target Goody Two-Shields. That's another good thing. It could be whatever spell that you drop, then you gain Divine Shield. It doesn't have to target Goody Two-Shields. So therefore, I think it's going to be good enough to include in some of the decks that you want to be playing as Paladin. From a arena perspective, a good card is the Scarlet Crusader. That's a 3/1 with Divine Shield. You're happy about picking that in the arena. It's perfectly fine. It's a good card. This one is just better. It has 1 more stats in attack, 1 more in health, and you can, if you do have the spell, you can recast the Divine Shield. I would say it's a high 4. I just leave it as a 4 because you can't guarantee that you have the spell. You can't build your draft in a way that you can guarantee stuff like this. But it is so much better than the Scarlet Crusader, and it is at least something where it falls short to some of the same things because it's low health. Like a ping and a 2-drop, they could still take care of Goody Two-Shields, but the possibility for it is so much more than the Scarlet Crusader. So therefore, I rated 4 stars in the arena, and because I expect there's going to be some kind of minion swarm build in Constructed, I also rated 4 stars there. So we have a 2-drop for Shaman, the Diligent Notetaker. This also has Spell Burst, and the Spell Burst effect is that whatever spell you cast that does the Spell Burst, you get another copy in hand. I think this is definitely something with what we already see and what is possible within Shaman. That is something that we can see as a build around. Therefore, I rate this 5 stars because it has a good early game, just as if something that you need to hold off some pressure from some kind of aggressive build. That's perfect. But you can also use this to set up some kind of really big heavy turn in the late game. Give you that extra spell that does something specifically, or you can use that in combination with something that will, again, things that breaks the rules of the game are something that I definitely see that you can exploit somehow. There's a rule that you can only have 2 cards in a deck of a specific type. This breaks that rule, and because you can have 2 Diligent Notetakers, you can have those 2 Diligent Notetakers and 2 specific spells, which you can make into 4. So you have the possibility with the Diligent Notetakers to actually get 4 spells in a deck list. You won't be running it initially, but you can build a deck in a way that you can break a rule that is set in the game. You can only ever have 2 copies of a card. Well, this violates that rule, and therefore there's some potential there. I expect that it'll be utilized. I do see some different possibilities with the OTK build, or that you buff something completely out of control, or you get a bunch of extra mana, or whatever might be the case that you do with the Diligent Notetaker, or you do this setup where you drop 2 Diligent Notetakers, you throw out a lightning bolt, stuff like that, then you get 2. Then you have your 3 lightning bolts for finishing combo, something like that. Something like this is what is possible with the Diligent Notetaker, and that's going to be utilized in some way or form in some of the decks that we will see in the beginning of Scholomance Academy. So definitely, strong card, a potential build around, and it violates the rules of the game. A 5-star constructed card, definitely. For Arena, definitely solid. It passes the vanilla test. It's going to be great. It might do something, or it just might be a 2-drop. So it's good early, it's good late game. Those are the kind of 2-drops you really want to put in your draft, to what you want to get in your draft and put in the deck that you're going to play in the arena games. So definitely no shortcomings here. It's not going to be that completely insane broken card that's going to be in Constructed, because you can't guarantee that it gets specific spells, but it's going to be good enough that sometimes you'll get the effect off, and then that's going to be good. Other than that, it's just going to be a good 2-drop, and you need good 2-drops in any specific draft that you have in Arena. So good, definitely pick it. It's going to be great. So it's something to really work into the draft. Alright, so a neutral Spellburst card. This one, as you can see, I'm not too thrilled about. Looking at the effect, getting a board effect. For instance, what you can perceive this if you look at the mana cost. There was the Volcanic Potion. That was a 3 mana spell which did this exact thing. Okay, so if that's worth 3 mana, then you get a 2/5 body, because the Wretched Tutor is not going to be damaged by its own spell burst. So you get a 2/5 for 2 mana. That's definitely good. The only challenge is that you need 2 cards for this to happen. You need to have the Wretched Tutor, and you need to have a spell. So already there, that's a shortcoming. The spell might cost something. And if that's the case, of course, the effect of the spell will be 2 things. Both the effect of the spell and also the spell burst from the Wretched Tutor. Then, as the Volcanic Potion is going to affect both your board and your opponent's board. So for Constructed, that might be something that you try to build around, that you don't want to have too many minions on your own side. But it's definitely not going to fit in a Zoo deck, because hurting your own board like that, that's not a card that you want to run in there. So I'm not going to give it a 1, because there might be some kind of control decks, or whatever might be the case, that want to utilize this. It's just for 4 mana, it's coming rather late in the game. If you, for instance, if you're Priest, why use a 4 mana slot when you need to use a spell on top of that for a 2/5 minion, which does the same thing, or even worse, as a Holy Nova? Holy Nova heals you, heals your board, and deals 2 damage to the rest of your opponent's board. So it's... I do not see that this is good enough to be run. It might be, I think it's a good card to have as a potential budget option. But for the high meta decks, I don't see this as something that we will experience in Constructed. Not in a way where it'll have an impact. And for Arena, yeah, I rated only 1 star, because it is kind of a catch-up card. But again, you need to make sure that you have a spell. Those are rarer in the Arena. And if you do have already have the board and you put this down as insurance, it's not really insurance, because it's going to hurt your own board. And what you never ever want to do, unless you can hurt your opponent even more, hurt the opposing side on the battlefield, then you don't ever want to hurt your own board, because there's some value, there's something to use your own board in a way to trade or push face damage or whatever might be the case. Just to have that wrecked by the Wretched Tutor, that's not good. So it's for me, until I see evidence otherwise, it's a never pick in Arena. And I don't see, it's only on the very maybe fringe case that I see some kind of utilization for it in Constructed. But generally I wouldn't recommend this in any way in either game mode, and it's going to be horrible in the Arena, so don't pick it there, definitely. Alright, a new type of card will also be introduced. This is the first one we review. It's the Studies card, which, as I understand, will be part of each and every class. And generally what it does, it'll provide some kind of effect for you. It'll let you discover something or whatever, and the next one of that type, be it minion or spell, gets a discount. So I evaluate this as something where you invest the mana, you get a mana discount, and then you discover something. Again, this kind of breaks the rule of the game a little bit, except you can't target specifically what you want to get if it's a discover effect. The discover effects are good because it lets you minimize the RNG of what you want to do, but it's not guaranteed that you get something specifically. So it is something that I can see for like a low cost spell druid that it might work. So therefore I give it 3 stars in constructed, because there's some kind of utilization that I recognize in there. Specifically, if there are some good spell burst cast that you want to activate, then Nature Studies is definitely good for that, because it's only going to be 1 mana to activate the spell burst. So that's the use case I see for this in constructed. I haven't seen specifically or have a construction in mind, like a theory craft in mind, where I see, well, this definitely works or has good support there for a specific druid archetype or something like that. So that's why I only rated 3 stars. This might be completely off if there's these good spell burst effects, but as the knowledge I have right now, with the amount of the expansion I've seen, then I give it 3 stars in constructed. For Arena though, just generating spells are generally good initiative cards, and you might not be offered, because if you want something in constructed, just put it in the deck. Of course there might be restrictions with regards to your card collection. But if there's no restrictions in regard to that, and you have a meta deck that you can construct with the dust or that what you already opened, you just put the card in the deck. You don't really have that option in the arena, and therefore it's a much better arena card than something that you could use for constructed. The same logic applies. You also get the spell burst cards. If you get the studies cards, then you also get the spell burst of that expansion specifically. So that still applies. Plus you might, or you will generate a spell, and that spell generally has some kind of initiative, and that is so much more powerful in the arena than it is in constructed. Therefore it has a higher rating in the arena, and it's definitely something that you will be happy to pick to give you some kind of use case where you need to get out of a specific situation. So definitely a good card, and you don't mind picking that in the arena draft, not at all. Alright, here I'm enough into the reviews of others that I'm probably going to be at odds end with the rest of the community, because from a constructed perspective, people has really rated Rattlegore very highly. So this is a legendary warrior minion, which is a 9 mana 9/9, so it kind of passes the vanilla stats, and has a death rattle that it's resummoned at a -1/-1. So this means that you have to, worst case, you have to beat this all the way down to a 1/1, and the next time it summons as a 0/0, and it won't get resummoned because it can't exist as a 0 health minion. So essentially, if you look at the use case for it, it's you for 9 mana you get, if you sum it all up, then from my math skills, so it's going to be a 45/45 in stats. That's completely crazy. It's just in constructed, you're not going to beat this one down. It doesn't have taunt. it doesn't have an immediate effect. It doesn't have rush. It doesn't heal you. It doesn't do anything. It just, you drop it for 9 mana, and it sits there. And then you push the initiative back to your opponent, and then your opponent has the possibility to do stuff to this. I give it 3 stars in Constructed because it's a really powerful card. And I also heard this again about the Dimensional Ripper deck for Warrior. This might be something. I just don't think so. Also, there's going to be introduced more transform effects already. We've seen that with this specific expansion. And with the stuff that is already in the game. So if you're going toe-to-toe against control decks where a 9-drop will be relevant, because on turn 9, if you get to turn 9 against an aggro deck, the aggro deck has lost anyway, because they want to finish the game much before turn 9. So it's not going to be relevant against aggro decks, and it's not going to do anything against aggro decks, because on turn 9, it's not going to do anything. So your opponent can just continue pounding face. So it's going to be against those control builds. And against those control builds, Rattlegore is simply not impactful enough. Because it can be transformed, it can be frozen, it can be a bunch of stuff. And if it's frozen, you don't want to silence this because you don't get the death rattle effects. It's simply not impactful enough. You could argue that if I should really be at even more odds with the community, I should just rate it at 2 stars, but I realized that it is a powerful effect. That said, in Constructed, I stand by that opinion. I don't think it will be tried, but it will not be good. The only kind of thing I could kick myself over is that I do not rate it a 1 or 2 star, because I do have some kind of nagging feeling that this will not see any play, or just in the beginning stages, and then it will not see any play after that. However, for Arena, the possibilities to have transform effects are there. Silence are there, but it's not something that your opponent can build around. So if you're not completely at the mercy of your opponent already having lethal on the board, then Rattlegore can be the deciding factor in you winning back the board, because you can dictate and punch your opponent's minions, and then you do get the 45 points of stats that this card actually provides. So for Arena, this is going to be completely insane. Of course, there's the fringe case where you are so much behind. This is a catch-up card, but it's a catch-up card that takes a few turns to actually build the momentum. So it's not just like you drop a Blizzard and then you drop a 4-drop minion and then you're back on the board. You have the power back, so to speak. It takes a few turns to actually get the ball rolling on this one in Arena, but it's much more relevant. Those extra stats you get out of the death rattle. With that said, it's a legendary. You're not going to see it that much. It's going to be powerful, but it's not going to be meta impactful. But it's just another strong card, it seems, for Warrior. Off the top of my mind, Warrior seems to be a really good Arena class. A little bit contingent on which kind of expansions that is put together in this patchwork that's going to be the Arena meta. But this one specifically, the Scholomance expansion, actually provides some really, really good Arena cards. So for Constructed, I have my doubts if it's even going to be a 3-star card. I'll rate it that, but it might be that I'm even wrong there. But already here at 3 stars, I'm at odds with the rest of the community, or at least some of them. So we'll see who is right at the other end of this. But I don't think it's going to be it's not going to be something you can use in constructed. It's not going to be good enough. So dual class for mage and thief. So mage has dual class against shaman, and thief on the other end. So this is going to be there's 10 classes in the game, and there's going to be 40 dual classes. And the 2 that impacts mage has now been revealed. I have the what was that called? The Devolving Missiles and the Wand Thief now, which we're reviewing at this moment. So at least for mage, again, also thief is getting a good strong dual class, and also shaman is getting a strong dual class card. But both dual class cards for mage, those are going to be good, definitely. Because Wand Thief, what it does is that you get a combo card for mage, and then lets you discover a mage spell. Generally, I've talked about having these discover effects not as good as being able to just play something in the deck, just choose a spell and be in there. But this is something where you have your early game, that you can present some kind of early game with the thief, or the mage. It might even be a little bit better for the thief, because they really want to curve and have those low cost minions, or spells for that matter, and they are much more. They get much more out of getting a mage spell than the mage might do, because they can simply run it. But still, in general, as the card is going to be strong in both classes, and for constructed, it's definitely something that I see. If there's any way that you want minions, if you have a pure spell mage, of course you don't want Wand Thief in there. But if you do have minions, or just for instance from a Highlander perspective, the Highlander mages you have right now, this is definitely something you don't might be to have in the deck, to present more options, as you can't run 2-offs in the deck. So Wand Thief actually suits what mage is already doing, and something that you definitely don't mind having in the deck as it is right now. And it's something on 1 mana, which is okay statted. It seems like a really good card for both classes. So for constructed, definitely, even though it is a little bit random with the discover effect, it is good enough that I foresee that this can be in each and every both rogue and mage build. It's so powerful. And for arena, same thing goes there. Again, it might be even, I can't break the scale and say it's a 5.5, but spells are even more impactful in the arena. And having that effect on a card which is so cheap that it does something right away in the early stages of the game, but if you have it drawn in the late stages of the game, it still does something, and it has the potential to really do something really magnificent for the situation that you're in. You might swing the board back, you might win more, you might be presented with lethal. There's so high possibilities for a bunch of different outcomes that actually really suits what you want to do, both the early game, but definitely also late game. So that is a very good 1-drop to actually get. So definitely, I think this is. I have a bunch of 5-star ratings already. I'm completely thrilled about this expansion. But this is the first, which gets, and it's a 1-drop, which gets 5 stars in constructed and 5 stars in the arena. Definitely a very, very strong suit, a very, very strong card for both game modes. Alright, a dual class legendary, Shan'do Wildclaw, which is a hunter and a druid dual class card. Shan'do has a choose 1 effect from the druid, and has some beast synergy from the Hunter. So either you can play Shan'do early game to give a bunch of beasts in your deck if you have a constructed deck which is revolving around beasts. So all beasts will have +1/+1. And those lingering effects where you do a board, not a board, a deck buff effect. As we have seen in the past, those are really strong, and it's a build-around effect, and it's something where you can, for instance, I definitely foresee that now we might see the Hunter transition away from the dragon builds that is used in Hunter at the moment into a more beast-centric build. So that's something you can do early game with Shan'do and can try to build around. But also just right now, from a Highlander perspective, you do have a 16 damage combo. It's 2 one-off cards that you need. But if you drop Bran, then you can drop Bran and Shan'do, and then you can copy your King Crush and then have 2 8/8 King Crush pound your opponent in the face or trade or whatever you want to do with that. So the effect of having to copy a friendly beast with the stats that it has are really, really strong. So that's just from the Hunter perspective. Also, if you really want to have survival power or staying power like that, you also have your Winged Guardians for Druid. And so there are some really strong and powerful effects that is where this can be slotted into a deck with the cards that we have that does see play already, that which are so powerful, and this just supports it. It might be a different deck altogether, but just looking at what we have already, this is definitely something that supports it, and it's just going to be a matter of where the community as a whole figure out a way to actually put Shan'do with the cost that he actually has into a deck which suits the existing or coming archetypes for either Hunter or Druid or both. So that's for constructed, because you can build around that. You can construct the deck in a specific way. Looking towards Arena, is still going to be strong. It's going to be a legendary. You're not going to see it that much, but it's not going to be as impactful there because you don't have the same opportunity to build around beasts. There's going to be a bunch of beasts in those 2 classes specifically. So it will have some kind of effect. It's just not going to be as powerful as the constructed side of things. And again, also Shan'do, if he does nothing else, you can say that he just buffs whatever beast you have in your deck. You can play him as a 3-mana 3/3 with the deck buff effect, and that's going to be okay. It's not going to be a great 3-drop, but it's going to be okay. So it's good. Definitely something that you want to pick in the Arena, and something we really have to watch out for what we actually build as a community in Constructed. So definitely a strong card for the expansion as a whole. Alright guys, there you have it. That concludes part 1 of the card review that I planned. It might be that I group some of the cards a little bit, but I want to do regular card reviews as they are kind of released. So stay tuned for that. And there's probably going to be the discrepancy between what I rate a stuff and other people might be much more right than I am. But this is my take on it, and I think it's fun to do. It's really something that it's such an exciting time when a new expansion is coming up, and this one seems really powerful with the stuff we've seen already. I really like what they're doing with the announcement videos, with what the stuff that we get. It's such a complete kind of approach to everything. This is something that I'm really excited for. It's going to be exciting to see what we actually construct as a community of the decks that we will have in the first few weeks whenever the expansion is completely released. But in the next one, stay tuned for part 2, where we will have more cards and we'll see what is in store for us when we have the new expansion coming out in early August.